Just heard the exasperated phrase, "We only get to see them on their terms." Last night, I went out for dinner at this cozy little restaurant. It was the kind of place that has just enough tables to feel full without being crowded, but the acoustics? Let's just say privacy was not part of the design. I have to admit, I am a naturally curious person, but in this case, I didn't even have to try to eavesdrop. The way the tables were set up, it was impossible not to catch snippets of the conversation happening right next to you. And let me tell you, what I overheard was pure gold. Seated next to me were two couples, probably in their late 60s or early 70s, clearly catching up over dinner. From the bits I caught, it seemed like they were discussing family and the holidays. You know, the usual seasonal stuff, who's hosting, who's coming, and all the little dramas that inevitably crop up. At first, it was your run-of-the-mill conversation, and I didn't pay much attention. But then, one of the women, let's call her Grandma A, dropped a line that made me stop mid-bite. She was talking about how much she loved seeing her family and how meaningful it was for her to spend time with them. Heartwarming, right? But then she pivoted, and it was like watching a train derail in slow motion. She started venting about how the holidays had to be planned around the schedule of her very young grandchild. Apparently, the kid is still at the age where naps are non-negotiable, and Grandma A was not having it. "It's absolutely ridiculous," she said, her voice loud enough that the whole restaurant probably caught it. "We only get to see them on their terms, and they never want to visit us." She went on and on about how unfair it was that the entire family had to cater to the whims of a toddler. I swear she even mimicked her daughter-in-law's voice at one point, saying, "Oh, sorry, the baby has to nap at 2 o'clock, with this exaggerated tone that was halfway between mocking and frustrated. I couldn't help but glance over, and the expressions on the others at the table were priceless. Her husband just nodded along like this was the most reasonable complaint in the world, while the other couple looked caught between agreement and discomfort. The whole thing was so surreal I almost thought I was on the set of some sitcom. But no, this was real life. The kicker? She capped it off by saying something like, "You'd think they'd appreciate us more after all we've done for them. But no, everything has to be on their terms." And all I could think was, maybe if you respected their schedule, they wouldn't mind visiting you more often, Grandma. It was one of those moments that made me realize how absurd real life can be. Sometimes I read posts online that sound too ridiculous to be true, and I think, there's no way people actually say things like this. But now I know better. Life is stranger than fiction, and sometimes all it takes is dinner at a small restaurant to remind you of that. Comments. Quadling, our 2-year-old makes it hard to go places because of naps. And our close friends either come here or make spaces available for her to nap if we go there. And that's just one of the reasons they are our close friends. Inani Muse 9669, haha, we just had this with my parents. My brother suggested we do our family Christmas with my parents on Saturday so that his stepkids could come for once, and I said that was fine with me, but I couldn't arrive until about 4 because my kids have activities until 1:30, and it's a roughly 2 HR drive. My mom texted us all the other day about everyone arriving at 1:30 and got upset when I said I'd get there at 4. Then yesterday, she complained to my brother and his wife that she, quote, "never gets what I want just to have everyone at her house for a whole afternoon, but someone always has to change the plan last minute. Uncute." As if I didn't tell her until last minute I'd be there at 4, and also she didn't text us or otherwise mention to us about being there at 1:30 until 2 days ago. This happens every freaking year. Edit. Thank you all for taking the time to read and comment. I realized some details in the original post might not have been clear, so I wanted to add a bit more context. The restaurant I was at was small and fairly quiet, with tables set very close together. I wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but their voices were clear as day. They were seated right behind me, and their conversation lasted about 20 minutes, mostly revolving around family dynamics and holiday schedules. Clarification. One detail I didn't mention earlier is that the woman complaining, who seemed to be the grandmother, actually used the word selfish when referring to her kids. This wasn't said in a joking way. It was clear she was genuinely frustrated. It gave me the impression there might be deeper, ongoing tension in their family dynamic. Hopefully this helps paint a fuller picture. Comments. Nepgrinds. Butterfly 9. When I was 7 months with my third, my parents came over unannounced from over an hour away. I opened the door and they both walked in and asked where my older two were. I informed them I'd laid them down for a nap 45 minutes ago and they were napping, as was I when they had arrived. Both parents then went upstairs and got my sleeping children up at this time, ages 3 and 1, then were baffled when I told them to get the fuck out of my house. Maggie Stardust, the road works both ways. Why can't she take her arse to see them instead of them schlepping the baby and all that entails to see her? Update 1. Wow, I seriously did not expect the story I shared to blow up like this. Honestly, I thought it would just be a quick post to vent about something I overheard, but seeing how much it resonated with everyone and how many of you are sharing your own stories has been amazing. Thank you for all the comments, messages, and even the debates. I've been reading through them, and it's clear this whole family drama during the holidays thing is something we all experience in one way or another. So, a lot of you asked if I remembered anything else from that night. At first, I didn't think I did, but as I kept replaying the conversation in my head, one moment came back to me, and honestly, it might be the most revealing part of the whole thing. Right before the couple got up to leave, the grandmother turned to the man she was with, her husband, I'm assuming, and said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. "We'll see how long they keep acting like they're better than us. I am not the one who has to compromise. If they don't want to come, I don't need them." Let me tell you, when she said that, her tone was something else. It wasn't just frustration or disappointment, it was sharp, almost bitter, like she was trying to convince herself of something she didn't fully believe. The kind of thing you say out loud to make it sound more real, even though deep down it isn't. The man with her husband, partner, or whoever he was, just nodded. No words, no reaction, just a slight nod, like he'd heard this rant a million times before. It was such a stark contrast to her energy, like he had completely checked out of the conversation. And honestly, that silence said a lot. Maybe he's just tired of the drama, or maybe he knows from experience that there's no point in trying to argue. Either way, it added a whole new layer to what I was witnessing. I couldn't stop thinking about what she said as they walked out of the restaurant. On the surface, it sounds like she's trying to take the high road, like she's saying, "Fine, I don't need them." But is that really true? Or is it just a defense mechanism because she feels rejected and powerless? There's a big difference between actually not needing someone and telling yourself you don't need them to avoid dealing with the hurt. And then there's the bigger question. Does this attitude help or hurt? It seems like she's doubling down on her stance, refusing to compromise, but how does that solve anything? If anything, it feels like it would just make things worse, pushing her family even further away. As I've been reflecting on it, I keep coming back to the fact that family relationships are rarely just about the thing being argued over. This wasn't really about naps or schedules, those are just surface level triggers. The real issue here feels like years of unspoken resentment, unmet expectations, and probably some generational differences in how people think family relationships should work. For example, the grandmother clearly feels like her kids should be prioritizing her more, but her kids and their partners are probably in survival mode, juggling jobs, young children, and their own lives. It's not that they don't care about her, but their priorities are different right now. And honestly, both sides have a point. What really struck me, though, was the tone of her last comment. It wasn't just about setting boundaries, it was about drawing a line in the sand. It made me wonder, does she want her kids to meet her halfway, or is she trying to force them to come all the way over to her side? And if it's the latter, how sustainable is that? The more I think about it, the more I feel like this isn't just about her family. It's a universal thing. How many of us have been in situations where we feel like we're always the ones making the effort? Or on the flip side, how many of us have felt like someone else's expectations are so high that we'll never meet them? It's such a tricky balance, and there's no easy solution. Anyway, that's where my head is at right now. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in their family's next group chat to see how this all plays out. If I ever overhear something else about this, or if some other memory from that night comes back to me, I'll definitely update again. For now, thanks for sticking with me and for sharing your own stories. You've given me so much to think about. Mood booster. With all the tension and heated debates this story stirred up, I figured it was a good time to share a moment from the restaurant that brought a little levity to the night. It's one of those things that just sticks with you and makes you smile when you think about it. So, as the older couple stormed out of the restaurant, clearly still frustrated, a little girl sitting at the next table over, probably no older than 5 or 6, turned to her mom with the most innocent, wide-eyed curiosity and said, "Mommy, why were those grandparents so mad? If I made Grandma sad, I'd just give her a big hug." The room went silent for a split second, and then everyone within earshot, including me, just started laughing. Not the kind of laughter that feels mean-spirited, but the kind that's a mix of, "This kid gets it," and "Wow, we could all use some of that energy in our lives." Her mom hugged her tight and said, "You're right, sweetie. That's exactly what you should do." It was such a wholesome moment, and it really put things into perspective. Here's this little kid who doesn't know the details, doesn't understand the years of family drama, and probably doesn't even care. She just sees things for what they are. Someone's upset, and the answer is love and a hug, simple as that. It reminded me that maybe we overcomplicate things as adults. We hold grudges, make big statements, and draw lines in the sand, but at the end of the day, maybe what we need is just to say, "Hey, I care about you," and move on. So, if this story had you feeling stressed or thinking about your own family drama, I hope this little girl's words bring you a moment of peace. Sometimes kids really do have a way of reminding us what matters most.